Welcome on into another episode of BKL. Makes me want to shout. The Bills, they're on the bye. They've got the week off. We do not. I am Josh Reed alongside Carl Jones, Matt Parrino, Ryan Talbot. The whole crew is here. The vibes changed, though, over the past couple of weeks. The Bills start out with 4 straight wins and lose back-to-back games. Plenty of blame to go around, but let's start on the offensive side of the ball, Matt. Is this offense maybe undercooked, if you will? Are they getting James involved enough?
That's a great question. And, within the moment of the game, as the second half or the first half was ending, I remember putting out a tweet about Bobby Babich because it felt like this defensive performance in the first half felt like rock bottom for this defense that has struggled at times over the last couple of seasons. And I know there's a lot of guys out, but, if Drake London doesn't step out of bounds at the 1-yard line, we're talking about 4 touchdowns. London and Bijan Robinson, 299 combined yards in 30 minutes of play. And, I thought things were looking pretty rough for Bobby Babich's unit. And we come out of this game, the way that unit played in the second half, shutting down the run, holding them to 3 points, giving them multiple opportunities, the offense, multiple opportunities to come back and tie the game, maybe win the game. We come out of that game talking mostly about the offense, and I think rightfully so. James Cook's usage is something that's been a talking point going back to even the win streak early in the season. At times, it felt like they were using him too much, and now we're on the other side of things on a 2-game losing streak and talking about whether or not they're using him enough. And, I think that it's unacceptable to come out of a game like that when you have your best player in James Cook, Josh Allen, obviously their best player, but their best weapon. Dalton Kincaid's not playing in that game. Joshua Palmer goes out early in the second quarter. You lean on James Cook in that scenario, and he was nowhere to be found. Now, going back and watching the game, there were some times in the passing game where I felt like the Bills had opportunities to go to James Cook. I don't know if Josh Allen didn't see him, didn't trust the look, maybe thought that the defense had it defended, but they have to do a better job, and Joe Brady specifically, of getting the ball to James Cook, whether it be in the run game or the pass game.
Yeah, Ryan, early in the year, we talked about this offense, and in particular the run game, this great offensive line. Cook, he was the AFC Offensive Player of the Month. I mean, that's how good he was the first 4 weeks of the season. How did this train go off the tracks?
That's a great question because it's not a James Cook problem. He's still running the ball extremely well. He was averaging over 5 yards per carry in this game against Atlanta. The Bills just went away from him. Again, a big series right before halftime. Where's James Cook? He's over on the sidelines. Fourth down play, he's nowhere to be found. His last touch came with 11:45
That's
left
wild.
in a one-score game.
That's wild.
Inexcusable. He, as Matt mentioned, you're out Palmer. It looked like this was going to be a big Palmer game based on maybe the stuff they saw. But when you lose him, you're already out without Kincaid. You have to pivot. You have to go with your best weapon. And this is the second week in a row, second loss in a row too, obviously, where Cook was not involved nearly enough in this offense. And, we've heard the same thing out of Joe Brady and Sean McDermott. We got to get him the ball more. We have to have him in these situations. And it hasn't happened yet. So now they're going to go into this bye week, and they really need to figure out a way to make sure that Cook is on the field in these pivotal moments.
Carl, I'm going to ask you about another one of the running backs. Ty Johnson. Last year, he was so important in the pass game. He's got 2 receptions this year. 2. Both of them, by the way, are for first downs. Josh Allen has called him the best third down back in the NFL. Where's Ty Johnson in the pass game when you lack weapons already?
I think it's a little twofold. Matt Parrino mentioned earlier that James Cook was open out of the backfield. Well, the play where Josh Allen just flips it to Ty Johnson, he was open immediately on that play as well. And regardless if that was the pressure or Josh Allen just not looking in that direction, that was an opportunity to get Ty Johnson the ball. Monday night, though, Ty Johnson saw an increase with his snaps because the Falcons blitzed, I believe, 56% of Josh Allen's snaps, dropbacks. Therefore, more Ty Johnson on the field. He's a much better pass protector in that scenario. But Joe Brady didn't find a way to weaponize him, and I think that's the main concern that I have with this offense going forward. We've talked about Dalton Kincaid whenever he gets back to the lineup, Khalil Shakir in certain instances, James Cook most notably. I just want to figure out ways to weaponize those players where, listen, I don't want to go, hey, find Dalton Kincaid in a progression or find Khalil Shakir in a progression. How about The play call for this scenario is to find a way to get James Cook the ball on a screenplay, or Dalton Kincaid is the first, second, and third option on this play. And I know none of those players are Bijan Robinson or Drake London. You saw on the other sidelines in that first half, Bijan Robinson and Drake London, the offensive coordinator said, all right, 7-5, 7-5, 7-5, every other play, making sure those two players saw the ball every other play.
Josh, real quick before we move on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Off of this is really interesting. I'd love to get everybody's thoughts on it because one of my biggest issues with Joe Brady right now is how he puts players in boxes, it feels like, right? Like you have Elijah Moore. A lot was made about this addition in the offseason. He comes in here and he feels like he's only allowed to really do one thing in this offense. There's not a lot of creativity other than these like gadget plays. This is a guy that played on the boundary at times in his career, has separation. That was the selling point of going out and getting him. We didn't really see them utilize Palmer in the way that they did in the first quarter until this last game. With Cook, I thought this was such an interesting contrast to how they use Bijan Robinson. They also have a guy they like a lot in Tyler Algier. He was on the field plenty of times with Bijan lined up in the formation as a pass catcher, and Bijan got looks in those sets. And I just think that Joe Brady, still a very young play caller, offensive coordinator, he's got to evolve and be more comfortable letting guys do more than one thing.
I think that's a heck of a point, and that kind of leads us a little bit into you guys may have heard the Bills fans are not exactly thrilled about this 2-game losing streak. So Ryan, they want everybody fired. Everybody's not getting fired. They believe it or not, this team lost 2 games in a row last year, 2023, 2022, all the way back to 2019. They've had 2-game losing streaks at minimum. So Ryan, which coordinator do you think is maybe more on the hot seat and needs to figure it out quicker?
Yeah, for me, it's Brady. I mean, Matt talked about the adjustments that Bobby Babich made in that game against Atlanta, and he can sit there and say, I'm without a first-round pick that I expected to play a big role. My best defensive tackle is out in multiple weeks. He's got a lot of guys on that side of the ball that have missed time, and I get it. The Bills have missed some players too. Kincaid last week, Palmer's missing this, but it's a lot about the usage on Joe Brady's side and how the players are not being used properly, and James Cook not being used as a receiver for whatever reason. You mentioned Ty Johnson not getting those third down looks. It comes down to the fact that he's not scheming guys open. That's something you've got to be able to do in this everyone eats offense. If you don't have a true number one, you got to be able to scheme them open, and it's not happening. You have to be able to adjust, like Matt said. Let Keon Coleman be the big slot every now and then. Let him maybe win in some opportunities there. The creativity just has not necessarily been the same from what we've seen from him. So, in my opinion, he's a little bit more on the hot seat.
Yeah, and how about this? How about we just a couple of things that he should just take from his playbook and shoot it directly into the moon. One of them is anytime you're handing it off to anybody but number 4 or one of the other running backs, like we don't need to see any more jet sweeps to Dawson Knox or Elijah Moore. And the other thing is I'm okay now not needing – I know most of the time they motion Reggie Gilliam back into the backfield from being out wide, but there were a couple of times where they didn't. I do not need to see 41 standing on, at the perimeter. Like I just don't need to see it. Which one do you feel? Which one of the coordinators do you think has the most to prove coming out of this bye week?
For me, it's Bobby Babich. I don't think this Bills defense, dating back to week 1 of last season, has looked even – I'm going to be respectful. I think they've been an average unit at best over the last 25-ish games. And I think that while Joe Brady, I have my concerns, and I think all of the stuff that we've spoken about so far is valid, this offense still has shown it can be an elite unit that can go toe-to-toe with anyone in football. I didn't forget the Lions game last year. I didn't forget the Rams game last year. I didn't forget what happened in week 1. This defense has yet to show at any point in the last 25 games that they can go toe-to-toe and put together one of those performances. No one in Western New York has said in that time span, this defense is elite. We've said that about the offense. That's why, and I get it. Missing your first-round pick, you have a lot of injuries on that side of the ball. Everyone is dealing with injuries in the National Football League. Go look at the San Francisco 49ers. I think us 4 can go play defense right now based off the stuff that they're dealing with. But they're still finding ways to be competitive, and that's just what I want to see with this defense going forward.
One of the things that I'm not sure is talked about quite enough with this defense, and it's something that I want us to talk about right now. I don't know if this defense has enough nastiness on it. We talk about tackling being an issue. Well, you got to be a little nasty to be able to stick your nose in there. When I look back, at some of the older defenses and everything, I think back to when Matt Milano was a little younger. We saw some of the hits he laid on guys. How about Jordan Poyer 5 years ago, 4 years ago? He was a guy who would come up and just try to run through you. We saw some of those guys. Even Daquan Jones a couple of years ago. Now the problem is you're getting these guys who are a little older and they're breaking down a little more physically, so they're not on the field to be nasty. I don't know if this defense has that nasty streak to them. I watch some of these other defenses around the NFL play. The Lions come to mind and the Houston Texans come to mind. You watch those two defenses play, they are flying all over the field, and they are maybe not hurt the other team, but they want them to remember them the day after they play. Matt, what do you think? Does this team have enough nasty players on it?
I don't know. I think that there are a couple guys. I think Shaq Thompson is that definition, fits that mold. I think Dorian Williams, when he's able to be on the field, plays with that kind of mindset. I think Taylor Rapp has that mindset. Sometimes it's against his own team, so that's a little bit of an issue. And he's obviously struggled through 6 games this season, and so much so that you're starting to see the conversation around these safeties hit peak panic button around NFL media circles. I don't know if you saw the Benjamin Solak tweet after he watched the Bills defensive tape. I mean, he came out and said no team in the league should be looking to make a trade at a position more than the Bills should be looking to make a trade at safety. And I think when Taylor Rapp has been good in this defense over the last 2.5 seasons, it's looked pretty good, and he plays with that kind of style. I think Michael Hoyt can bring a little bit of that. I mean, if you go back and look at some of those Rams defenses, I think there was that element, and he seemed like that kind of junkyard dog that they used in multiple different ways. And we have blown this up, and I say we, the collective Bills conversation has blown Michael Hoyt up into a place. I don't know if he's going to be able to live up to what he's been set up to have to do. I do think, though, that his implementation in this defense, and why I'm not ready to throw Bobby Babich completely under the bus quite yet, because we haven't seen this defense in totality, and maybe we never will, depending on Maxwell Hairston getting back, and you can never project for injuries long term. But I think that Hoyt's addition, Ogunjobi being a significant upgrade over what we saw from TJ Sanders through 5 games, has the chance to transform this defense a little bit and allow for guys who've had slow starts like Rousseau, Benford, I thought he played a little bit better this last week, and then Rapp and Bishop, allow them to maybe find some consistency playing with better guys around them.
Matt, I think you are spot on about Hoyt. Look, it's not always about the talent level. Sometimes you need a guy that just delivers a spark. Look, you got to be talented enough to play. But I think that defense maybe needs a guy that jiggles his head a little and you can hear the screws just kind of floating around in there. Now, meanwhile, he is an Ivy League guy, so don't get me wrong, he's plenty smart. But when we were at training camp, there were a couple of times where he would almost sneak out onto the field for special teams reps. And the coaches were like, hey, guy, we don't need you running around on special teams right now. But I think Michael Hoyt he's going to be the guy that delivers that little bit of nasty streak to him and a spark, almost like back in the day we'd see Jerry Hughes type of guy, where it just, I'm not saying dirty, but found a way to walk the line and make that other team go, the guy's a little crazy. Ryan, when you look at this defense, what's your biggest concern?
It's the back end. It's certainly the cornerback play, the safety play. And I know Sean McDermott says it all starts up front, but you had, Joey Bosa make a few plays in this game that were negated by penalties. Ed Oliver's back in the fold now. We're talking about Hoyt and Ogunjobi. But the safety play was abysmal in that matchup against Atlanta. It missed tackles galore between the two of them. We've talked a lot about the cornerback 2 position on this show, and Christian Benford's underwhelming season. So that, for me, has been the biggest issue. Will it improve if they get more pressure up front, if they're a little bit nastier? I think it can. But I also think that they should be in the market and looking to see what's out there at safety or even at cornerback, too, to kind of add to the mix, depending on what Hairston's outlook looks like.
Let's go to our resident defensive back now. Carl, what the cornerback situation right now, they seem like they play off so much. It seems like everything is just easy for the other team's quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I think that's by design. They don't have a lot of faith and trust in their DBs outside of 47-7 to be able to play with guys in space. I look back to that first half against Atlanta, and I was nothing short of disgusted in how they really approached that game from a pass coverage perspective. Christian Benford, you paid him a boatload of money, and he's not Pat Surtain or Derek Stingley. You will never hear me say that. But he is your cornerback one. So anytime that you give that guy that much money and put him to the forefront of your team, he is supposed to be in front of opposing teams' wide receiver one. You saw what the Patriots did to you previous week. They didn't have him follow Stephon Diggs. This week he did follow Drake London, but they played so much passive zone it didn't matter. He was running with free releases, and he was running through zone scot-free, and that was unacceptable. The second half, he was all in his face. Drake London, I believe, had 1 or 2 catches. I just would love to see this team implement more of a nasty mindset in terms of the back end and just saying, like, hey, if we get beat, we get beat. And I know that's not Sean McDermott's mantra, but that mantra really hasn't worked over the previous 7
What's that look like? Let me ask you then. If you put the DC hat on real quick, what's that look like?
Well, I think
coming out of the bye week.
I think 2 things. One, hey, you ask Max Harrison's doctor, say like, hey, how ready is he? I say, hey, like my boy, is that knee good or not? Because if he is, and I've said that I didn't know how ready he looked back in July anyways. I thought he was going to lose that week 1 drop to Trey White regardless based off what I saw. But I'm hopeful that with more time on task, learning the playbook a little bit more, I know he's not in the building technically on the field, but I will hope he's a little bit more ready. So like, hey, so we can run a little bit, because their inability to play man coverage right now hurts. They play the most notable rep of man coverage they play, Drake London almost scored. Jamarcus Ingram ended up on the ground and they almost scored. That's how inept they are at playing that style of defense where they were able to get into your face. And I get it from Bobby Babich and Sean McDermott's perspective. You see something like that and you don't want to do it no more. But I think you got to be willing to get burnt in order to make some of those plays and cause quarterbacks a little discomfort.
Matt, let me pop in here for a second.
Yeah, what you got?
And I'd love to hear Ryan and Carl and Josh, all of you guys, respond to it. I think I think he's gotten plenty of heat, but when you're going to play the zone off consistent coverage, to me, your middle linebacker, your undersized middle linebacker who plays at times more like a safety, has to be better in coverage than he's been this year. And I saw a couple of snaps in this game where Terrell Bernard kind of pops up after a complete pass to London or whoever, and he's kind of looking around, and it felt like he's kind of like pointing fingers, or maybe he's mad at himself and he's yelling at himself. I don't really know what he's doing there. But to me, this is your captain. This is the guy that you just gave an extension to. And if you look right now on Pro Football Focus, and I know that's been a big topic of conversation this week, get PFF grades off of Sunday Night Football and all that stuff. But I do like it as kind of like just a baseline level of understanding of what guys are able to do and how they're performing. Through 6 games, they grade guys on a scale of 0 to 100. And the coverage grade right now for the Bills linebackers, you have Terrell Bernard coming in with a 49.6 out of 100. You have Matt Milano coming, when he was on the field, 41.5. And then Dorian Williams, when he's been on the field, 31.9. This could arguably be the worst group of coverage linebackers in the NFL. And Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're going to play a zone-heavy scheme, you need your linebackers to be able to cover.
Yeah, I mean, simple as that. I mean, you need all 7 guys on the back end to be able to do their jobs, and they're 111th, like Sean McDermott alludes to.
And here's the thing to add to that a little bit is when you're undersized, you're supposed to be athletic, right? Because you're not the run-stopping linebacker. So you should be able to run with wide receivers and running backs and tight ends out of the backfield, because you would think that would be a strength of theirs. Ryan, any final thought on that?
Yeah, final thought, it's not much better in terms of the depth either. I mean, Shaq Thompson's having a good season, but that's not necessarily his forte. Joe Andreessen's biggest struggle is in coverage. So this seems to be something that runs in the linebacker room, and that's problematic.
Balin Spector. Sorry, everybody just shut it off, didn't they? Everybody just shut us down. I said Balin Spector, everybody hit power off.
I'm not comfortable with this entire setup right now, because usually I got the mute button and I actually have the power to remove people from the screen. That you would have got dinged with that, Mr. Reed.
And I should have. I'll put that on myself. Hey, one final topic here I want to get to. Speaking of Balin Spector, let's talk about top-tier talent on this roster right now. Matt, let's start with you. Where is it? I mean, look, you've got Josh Allen and Cook. We mentioned Benford. I'd still put him up there, Deion Dawkins. But is there enough of that top-tier talent? Have they been able to hit enough home runs at the top end of the draft to make you go, okay, it just hasn't worked out? Max Hairston got hurt. That's a little bit of an exception right now.
Let me bounce it down to Ryan. I feel like I've started all of these topics.
Yeah, he did. No, it was a great topic. Yeah. Go ahead, Ryan. What do you got?
They're hitting more singles than they are home runs, and that's a problem at the top of the draft. That's where you're supposed to get their hits. And I hate the topic of, well, they missed out on this guy, but they found this guy later on. It's the Kyer Elam, Christian Benford talk. You can go all the way back to John McCargo and Kyle Williams. Well, we whiffed on John McCargo, but hey, we got Kyle Williams. You'd be great hitting on both of those picks, and then you wouldn't have to go into free agency and pay big money for guys or go back into the draft a few years later and find players. They're not doing a good enough job at the top of the draft class. You look at some of these drafts. Kyer Elam is a great example. I feel like they panicked when Trent McDuffie went off that board. Everyone knew cornerback was a huge need. Well, who's next on our board? Kyer Elam. Instead of going with maybe the best player available in that draft class. And they're just not hitting enough there. And for every gem, Deion Walker's a gem. But you shouldn't be having to have those guys in the fourth round. You should be hitting at a much more consistent rate early on. The Bills have not done a good job.
Carl, is there something to be said for, not only trading up, but eventually trading way up? Like, go get, because let's face it, that's one of their issues, is they're drafting at 30.
Right.
They're drafting at 29. And when they do trade up, it's to 26. I'm talking about shoot up that board. A good example, I think, would be Brian Thomas, right? I think a lot of people were like, hey, trade up 15 spots and try to go get that guy, the blue chipper.
Yeah, so I know some people will say, well, the Eagles have all this top-tier talent, and they pick. Well, the Eagles also had some down years, so they were able to get a Jalen Carter at 10 overall. They were able to get a Devontae Smith at 6 overall. Having said that, though, I think back to when the Chiefs jumped the Buffalo Bills to go get a Trent McDuffie. I'm not saying you need to go get Roma Dunze at 9 overall. But, like, Brian Thomas, I believe, was available at around 20. Like, I know the baby jumps that they've done, like you just alluded to. I think that when you have a guy on your board that you aren't afraid to give up a next year's 2 to go get, I wouldn't be opposed to doing so, especially they have so many good players. That's why when this team has injuries, they still are able to sustain it because their backups are still National Football quality players. But at this point, Bills Mafia, this fan base, the front office, the organization, I don't want to say they're apathetic to regular season success, but they want to see the success in January and beyond. And you know who helps you win those games? All pros, Pro Bowlers, and guys who will wear gold jackets one day. And unfortunately, outside of Josh, Cook, Deion, Spencer Brown, and maybe Christian, I don't know if anyone else on that team is close to that conversation.
Final thought on that, Matt?
So I think you could probably call me a Brandon Beane defender, maybe, with the take that I'm about to drop here, but I'm willing to wear that a little bit. What was T.J. Sanders drafted to be? He was drafted to be a situational pass rusher in year 1, which I think at times through the first 5 games, he's looked pretty good in that role. Has it been consistent? No. Has it been enough? No. But he's a young player. He's going to get a chance to kind of dial back here for the next month and a half, come back and maybe be DT5 for a playoff run. And if we're talking about making impactful plays in the playoffs for him, and that is his year 1 contribution, even if it's 2 or 3 in some big time third down situations, I think you're signing up for that. I think that's what you traded up to draft him for. Like you said, you can't project for the Maxwell Hairston injury. We'll see what he is when he comes back. My take is, what good are these late in the first round draft picks that you seem to be struggling so much to hit on? Start trading them away now. Go get Chris Olave. Go get a wide receiver that can be a difference maker right now, because what I think was unearthed in this game more than anything was that if you lose a Dalton Kincaid, if you lose a Joshua Palmer, you don't have the depth on this team right now to withstand that from a weapon skill perspective. So go out and get one more guy that's still on a rookie contract. You have a 5th-year option next year in a guy like Olave, or maybe it's a Rashid Shaheed. There's a bunch of names being bantied around. I'm not as big on the Jacoby Myers idea for multiple reasons. I think if you're going out to get a true separator. I think he's a little bit more of a slot player as well. I like the Olave and Shaheed idea a little bit better. But to me, that is where it's at. And if you think it's linebacker or safety that you need to offload one of these picks to bring in one of those players, do it. Because I don't want to live in a world, for Bills fans' sake, where they have another Keon Coleman type situation transpire where you go get a guy who you like, but you've miscast, and the guys that you passed up on, drafting Xavier Worthy, having the success that he's had in KC, Ladd McConkey and what he's done in LA. I just don't think that you want to live through or chance one of those situations. The best thing Brandon Beane ever did was trade a first-round pick for an established player in Stephon Diggs. They might have to do that again and say, like I think LA has done, bleep those picks.
Okay, let's stay right there. Okay, last one. I lied. This wasn't the last topic. One, but we can make this one quick. If the Bills are going to pull the trigger, will they? Give me your quick thought. We'll go around. Let's start with Ryan. Will the Bills make a move at the deadline? And if so, not which position will they address? Which one do you think they should address?
One, I think they will address it. I think the AFC is too wide open this year for them not to try to make that move, to make the final push to finally get to the Super Bowl. And for me, as much as I would love it to be a weapon for Josh Allen, I think the defense has more holes on it. I think that's where they really have to look. I think you can get a safety without breaking the bank or giving up a valuable pick too, and that kind of comes into play where Brandon Beane's been hesitant to make that big move after the Stephon Diggs trade. So, you know, if it's a late day 2 pick or a day 3 pick for someone that can come in and start, I think that's more realistic.
Matt, what do you got?
I think they're going to trade for at least 2 of the 3 big positions, wide receiver, linebacker, and safety. Why I wouldn't do safety, or at least I would like to see a little bit more, I want to see Jordan Hancock play. I want to see what that looks like for another, like the Bills have hit on so many day 3 guys over the years. And I thought what we saw from him in the preseason was enough to at least give him a look. And, you know, I also thought it was interesting that you throw Jordan Poyer out there in the second half for Cole Bishop, and I think the only points that were scored in the second half were with Cole Bishop back on the field fighting through cramps. So I don't know. Like, I know Jordan Poyer's probably past his prime, no doubt about it. But I also think it's worth maybe sending a message if you're Sean McDermott or Bobby Babich, like Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop. There's accountability. It hasn't been good enough. We're going to go against the Panthers, and I'm going to see what this looks like with the 2 Jordans. Go trade for you still have Matt Milano kind of hanging out there as well, but get a receiver, get a linebacker, and if you want to go get a safety, go do that. I do all of them because, to Ryan's point, this is a wide open AFC. 1 in 5 Ravens are sitting there right now as what was supposed to be your top competition coming into the year. I think you turn over every rock.
Wide receiver, I think that's the position that needs the most help. I don't have much faith in the defense, so I don't know if one player changes that.
I'm with you. I go wide receiver as well. I think we saw it last year. He did it with Amari Cooper, right? And everybody's like, oh, they don't have the cap space. They didn't have cap space last year either. And they figured out a way to make it work. They brought Cooper in. Look, I know it didn't end the way you wanted, the way Bills fans wanted. I do think he got dinged up, and I think that was a part of it. But I think everybody thought when they made the deal for Amari Cooper, oh, all right, that's a guy who can make some plays in the pass game. And I think that when push comes to shove, they're going to try to get Josh Allen, his guy, because at the end of the day, the way the defense is playing right now, the offense needs to play better because they're going to need to score a heck of a lot of points if they're hoping to be playing late into January. That does it, fellas. Great show. Matt Parrino, Ryan Talbot, Carl Jones. I'm Josh Reed. Thanks for watching and listening to Bills Kickoff Live. Makes me want to shout.